The catacombs of Roman Milete are today found in the town of Rabat on Malta and are called St. Paul's Catacombs. The above-ground stuff may be nicely in the style of, but it's not ancient. We go below for the authentic experience. And one of the first things we see isn't perhaps what you were expecting. It's a dining room, a triclinium.
It's something like a table with something like a couch area around it, very much like the dining arrangement in a Roman house, only here it's in a catacomb. Now we have pictures of these surviving from around the Roman Empire, but according to my guidebook, Malta is the only place where we have physical examples of these.
There are a few of these where people would come to eat a meal, a refrigerium, at the burial ceremony, and also again during the Festival of the Dead in February. These are the largest catacombs in Malta and were used in the Roman and Byzantine periods to bury over 1,000 people in an area about a third of a football pitch.
One way to share your feast with the departed would be to hold it here on this agape, this stone representation of a mensa, which is just Latin for table. And you'll notice that it's got an interesting feature. It's got a little niche carved at one edge of the table, and through this there is a little drain which drains into this gap here. So one thought is that perhaps an amphora or something like that, a pot of some sort, stood here, and that would collect all the drainage from the table, and that would be, if you like, the departed's share. It was one way of sharing a feast with the departed. We don't know this, it's conjectural. What did it smell like, though? Well, they did anoint the dead with all sorts of perfumes and unguents and so forth, but would that have been enough? I don't know. Probably not.
Unfortunately, the catacombs were pretty thoroughly looted in later periods, including by the so-called archaeologists of the late 19th century. A few grave goods have survived, generally adornments like jewellery, and some toys from the children's tombs, the small loculi, these recesses in the walls. Roman law forbade burials within the town walls, so these catacombs were a short but hygienically significant distance outside the city.
We have here a very clear example of a plug door. This is the plug, this bit, and this bit is the door. And this would be cut to fit exactly this hole, and this enormous piece of stone would be put in there, and it would be sealed with some sort of cementy type stuff, bits of crushed pottery and lime, that sort of thing, and that would seal the tomb. Here we have three rather grand tombs in interesting different states of being. The first has its lid missing. You can see where the two bodies went in these two slots, and very considerately they've even got little headrests, little pillows, and this one is missing its lid. This one has a lid, but the lid is solid, it's carved on in one piece. That's because you didn't get in that way, you got through here, and the hole in the side, and then inside you've got your recesses for the bodies. And there we have the little recesses for the heads. This third one is rather plain on the top, although it still has the fancy arches that the others have. And there we have the little recesses for the heads.
The walls here have many little niches in them for oil lamps. This chisel work all looks very rough, but don't forget this would all have been plastered. Some are on corners, as here. Here you can see some surviving plasterworks. It all looks a bit smoother.
In its heyday, this would have been a highly decorated room, all covered in white stucco and painted to look much less grim than it looks now.
What the blinking flip is that in the ceiling?
Here we have a luminarium, which is fancy for a skylight.
And anywhere where there was a tiny bit of natural light, there was a surprising amount of life, with lots of slugs and snails and loads of spiders, and judging by the size of them, they were getting quite a fair number of dipteric customers. It was quite noticeable that the plaster was in much better condition around the skylights. I'm thinking it was something to do with ventilation and dampness. Here you can see a section with quite well-preserved plaster, and it gives the arches a much sharper and geometrically accurate line of edge.
In the days of the night, sometimes treasure seekers were granted licenses to come down here and look for treasure.
These were also used as air raid shelters during World War II, although some people preferred to take their chances above ground because at least they didn't run the risk there of getting sealed in. These catacombs have been reused many times as animal pens, for instance, and also people came down here for seeking raw materials such as lime.
Christians, Jews and pagans were all entombed down here, and wow, some of these routes really are long.
I think you can see clear enough what's on the front of this plug door. It's a load of carvings of surgeons' tools, forceps and knives and saws and so forth. So either this tomb belonged to a doctor and his family, or possibly the group of surgeons, a local guild perhaps clubbed together to finance this particular catacomb.
The gravediggers who carved this place out also acted as guides and would show visitors around. Here, I'll show you the size of my foot so you get an idea of the width of the corridors. Yes, all right, I know what you really want. Cue the creepy music.
This large cavern was, after these stopped being used as catacombs, used instead by the Byzantines as a church, would you believe? It was all covered in frescoes and so forth, which unfortunately have since deteriorated. But it certainly resonates enough. Told you.
Lindybeige!